It was an ordinary day in a small town, yet the quiet hum of routine would soon be broken by an extraordinary moment, a story that no one could have predicted. The tale begins with a man who had spent over 30 years of his life in service, in the trenches of a community, and at the heart of his family's well-being. Walter Thompson, a 71-year-old former basketball coach and veteran, had always been a pillar of strength and resilience. Yet, on this day, he would find himself facing a battle not on the court, but against the corporate system that had turned its back on him when he needed it most. Walter walked into First Capital Bank, as he had every month for the last 3 decades, hoping to access the funds he needed to purchase his wife's new cancer medication. His steps were slow and steady, his cane clicking against the floor, but today, the weight of the world seemed heavier on his shoulders. His wife, Margaret, had been battling cancer for years, and after a recent visit to her oncologist, her medication had changed. The prescription was crucial, costing $486, and the pharmacy closed in just hours. Walter needed to retrieve his pension funds immediately, yet the bank's cold, unyielding policies were about to throw him into a whirlwind of frustration and despair. The first sign of trouble came from the bank teller, a woman who had likely seen hundreds of faces come and go over the years. She eyed Walter with a mix of indifference and authority, as she explained that, without the required digital identification, his account would remain locked. No exceptions. Walter's plea was simple. "Please, I've been banking here for over 30 years. Miss Sarah used to know me. She knew my face. I just need to get my wife's medication." His voice trembled as he fumbled with the papers in his hands, his veteran's ID, a stack of old utility bills, and a social security letter. His hands shook with age and emotion, and when the papers slipped from his grasp, they scattered across the floor like fallen leaves, a silent testament to his years of effort and dedication. Some customers watched, others looked away in discomfort, but the security guards were quick to intervene, pushing Walter toward the exit. His pleas for mercy fell on deaf ears. "You're creating a disturbance," one of the guards said as he grabbed Walter's arm. "If you won't leave voluntarily, we'll have to escort you out." As Walter was escorted out, his eyes filled with unshed tears, but he refused to let them fall. His dignity, battered but intact, kept him moving forward. The sense of helplessness was palpable. Outside, pedestrians began to stop and watch, some filming the scene with their phones, while others murmured in disbelief. It was clear that something was wrong, but what could they do? Just as the doors closed behind him, a voice rang out from inside the bank. "Mr. Thompson?" The voice belonged to Rebecca Stevens, the new bank manager, who had risen through the ranks with a reputation for enforcing new security protocols with precision. At 34, she was quick to implement changes, and today, those changes were about to put Walter's decades of banking history to the test. Inside her office, she sat behind her desk, her fingers moving quickly over the keyboard, pulling up his account information. She explained, without sympathy, that the new security measures, implemented as part of a recent merger, required all accounts to be digitally verified. "No exceptions," she said. "This is federal law. We cannot access your account without the necessary digital identification." Walter was silent for a moment, the weight of the words sinking in. He had been loyal to the bank for decades, but now, that loyalty meant nothing. He tried to explain that he didn't have a smartphone, that his wife was too ill to help him navigate the new system. His voice cracked with emotion as he asked for a simple solution. "Perhaps a family member could help you with the digital verification," Rebecca suggested coldly, already knowing that this would take time, a luxury Walter didn't have. His mind raced. His son was stationed overseas, and his wife's sister wouldn't arrive for another week. But Margaret needed her medication now. Time was running out, and the system designed to protect him was now the very thing standing in his way. The scene inside the bank had become a spectacle. People had gathered, watching the elderly man struggle against the impersonal forces of bureaucracy. Many of them knew him, Coach Thompson, the man who had helped countless young people, who had spent years supporting families in need. He was more than just a customer, he was a community fixture. Yet none of that seemed to matter to the bank's unyielding policies. The clock was ticking toward 5 p.m. The pharmacy's deadline loomed large. As Walter sat there, defeated, something unexpected happened. Shaquille O'Neal, the basketball legend, and his teenage daughter, Mahira, were walking into the bank when they noticed the elderly man sitting outside, his shoulders shaking with quiet sobs. Shaq, towering in stature but with a voice full of warmth, approached him. "Sir, are you okay?" Shaq asked, his deep voice offering a stark contrast to Walter's fragile state. Walter looked up, hastily wiping his eyes, but there was no hiding the pain in his expression. "I'm sorry," he said. "It's just my wife, Margaret. She needs her medication, the new cancer treatment, and they won't let me get the money." Shaq looked down at the papers scattered at Walter's feet, bank statements, medical prescriptions, and photographs of days long past. Mahira, his daughter, knelt down and began to help Walter collect the documents. One of the photos caught her eye. It was a team picture from a championship season at Millbrook High. "Dad, look," she said. "That's Coach Thompson." And then, like a twist of fate, just as Walter stood outside the bank, the towering figure of Shaquille O'Neal arrived with his teenage daughter, Mahira. As they made their way toward the entrance, Shaq noticed Walter, sitting on a bench, his shoulders shaking with quiet sobs. A wooden cane gripped tightly in his hands. "Dad, look," Mahira whispered, tugging at Shaq's sleeve. "There's something wrong." Shaquille O'Neal, whose imposing presence on the court had been matched by his kind heart off of it, paused. His deep voice was gentle, a stark contrast to his towering figure. "Sir, are you okay?" he asked, his concern evident. Walter looked up hastily, wiping his eyes with the back of his hand. "I'm sorry," he said, trying to gather the scattered papers at his feet. "It's just my wife Margaret, she needs her medication. The new cancer treatment, and they won't let me access my money to pay for it." As the situation unfolded before him, Mahira was already kneeling down, helping Walter collect the scattered papers. "Dad, look at this," she said, picking up a photograph from the ground. It was a team picture from Millbrook High's championship season, a memory of a past that had shaped the community and Walter's life. Shaquille O'Neal's eyes softened as he connected the dots. "That's Coach Thompson," he said, recognizing the name from earlier discussions at a local youth camp. His heart went out to the man sitting before him, who had given so much to others and now found himself in a helpless situation. Shaq's mind raced. This was a man who had devoted his life to others, a man who had built a legacy in his community. And now, he was being turned away from accessing his own hard-earned money because of a digital policy designed to protect people like him. But in practice, it was only adding another barrier to his life. "I can't believe this," Shaquille muttered under his breath, his towering figure taking another step toward Walter. The former NBA star knelt down, extending a hand to help Walter to his feet. "Don't worry, we've got this. Let me help you." In that moment, the boundaries between celebrity and ordinary citizen blurred. Shaquille O'Neal wasn't just an NBA legend, he was a man who knew the importance of community and compassion. And as the scene unfolded, with Walter still struggling to comprehend what was happening,